This is McKenna Collins, host of Table Talk. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thank you for tuning into the following broadcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we talk about movie and TV news and reviews, and maybe, just maybe, we'll learn a little something about ourselves. If not, then maybe I made you laugh a couple of times. I don't know. New episodes air bi-weekly on Tuesdays. Thanks again for checking out the totally spectacular following broadcast here on Public House Media.
In 2014, Germany shocked the world by putting together one of the most talented and most dominant rosters in soccer history. Argentina, they were so close, yet couldn't put it together when it most mattered. Now you've got an Argentina team that's hungry for revenge.
Messi! And you never couldn't stop it!
But what about England?
Pass to Rooney. Only Sturridge in the middle, there he is! Goal!
Or France?
And Sissoko! They're running riot!
Or Spain?
It's broken for Fabregas. Now it's Iniesta. This is it. That's the goal.
All 32 teams in this tournament are vying for the opportunity to hoist the World Cup trophy.
Still Gervinho. Oh, he's done it.
If you want to be a part of the action at Russia 2018, you're going to need your soccer passport, the World Cup edition. At Public House Media, we are excited to launch a new soccer podcast called Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition. Come alongside hosts and fans and guests from around the world as we bring you all the action from the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Because who knows, anything can happen in the FIFA World Cup.
What about that? It's John Brooks.
So come on, grab your soccer passport and join us for all the action from Russia 2018.
A sensational volley.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Your Soccer Passport. We've got a World Cup edition for you as we have been doing the last couple of days. It's time for Group G, the group that features Belgium, Panama, Tunisia, and England. 4 teams, very different styles, but all at the same time, very intriguing as well too. I'm excited to be joined by Marc Serber, one of the many hosts and voices and talents that we have here at Your Soccer Passport. A very good day to you, Marc. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Great to be here.
All right, Marc. So as we get ready to jump into this episode, we want to remind people, of course, that we are presented by Public House Media. You can check them out by going to thephmedia.com. And, of course, you can find this show along with numerous other shows on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show, please subscribe and tell your friends about it as well, too. I know it seems like there's a soccer podcast for every single little niche nowadays, but hey, the World Cup is an exciting time. And I think one unique thing we offer, Marc, is we've got fans from literally around the country, but around the world that are a part of the show as well, too, which is pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not just that they're fans, but it's that they're incredibly informed fans and many fans who work within the business. And we got a Luis Barranca from Peru, who's a producer of a soccer radio show. We got Bryce, who works for ESPN Radio up in the UP in Michigan. And so these are guys that really know their stuff. And I know it's for fans, by fans, but these are some of the most informed fans I've ever met.
Yeah,
so
I would agree as well, too. I mean, one of our other hosts, too, Zach, is in Russia right now for the World Cup. And then Ivan Sanchez as well, too, lives in the United States, but a native of Mexico as well, too. Very sound, very thorough, very clear thinker as well, too. So it's just kind of cool when you get to have all of these amazing people get together and say, hey, let's talk about the game that we love. And we're going to do that today, starting with this group. Belgium, we're going to start with Belgium right off the bat. This talented group of players is being called the Golden Generation, Marc, and rightfully so, led by Kevin De Bruyne, as we know, watching the Premier League. One of the most electric players I've seen in a long time. You get to see a lot of soccer as well, too, with your broadcasting. But, I mean, you look at a talent and just the continual gradual shift upwards in this gentleman's career just lights out in every aspect of when he touches the ball, in my opinion.
And this season was one of his best seasons for sure. His ability to turn something out of nothing is exactly what they're going to need against teams like Tunisia and Panama, that you expect to really sit back and just try and pack it in and say, hey, how are you going to beat us? Try and find a way through us, because we're not going to get into a track race with you because we can't. And I think that's where De Bruyne is so big. But this team is just loaded with attacking talent. And the thing about Belgium is they're my dark horse for this tournament. And I don't even think they should be considered a dark horse. I mean, I think they're outside that top tier of teams that can win when you talk about the Germany and Brazils. And well, we won't talk about in this preview, but until today, Spain. But they're in some calamity right now. But Belgium, as you said, a golden generation, the best since 1990, and the team that featured Jens Kerleman, Michel Prudhomme in goal, and the terrific Enzo Schifo in the midfield. But I think this generation's even better. And the thing for me is I feel this is the tournament where they need to deliver. The last few tournaments, whether it was the World Cup in 2014, the Euros in 2016, they were all really talented players, but they were really young players. They've now been together for a while. They've really melded into a great unit under Roberto Martinez and his 3-4-3 formation. This, for me, is the tournament where this is the tournament where they have to come good, and they have to come good now.
And personally, I've always been a big fan of Roberto Martinez as well, too. I know that his time, it was at Everton, right, when he was in the Premier League for a while there, did a great job. And even I've enjoyed him as an analyst as well, too. But I'm excited to see him back on the national stage. One interesting fact that I personally didn't know until doing research about this, that this is the same squad that was brought to the 2014 World Cup and the 2016 Euros. And the disappointment, unfortunately, for both of those times was that they, number one, didn't win, but at the same time, does that play to a chemistry perspective, I guess? If you keep the same, keep the band together for 4 years and you know what you're capable of doing, and in theory, most, if not all, the players have gotten better over the last 4 years as well, too. In theory, this team should be better, right, Mark?
Absolutely, and I think that you have seen them, Bon. I mean, you take a look at what they did in qualifying, 43 goals in the 10 matches, and only once held below 2. So we know they can score. Now, it's what's going to be done behind them in their defense. When you have a 3-4-3, you sometimes leave yourself a bit exposed. So it's what does Roberto Martinez do there? But, like I said, one of the reasons I think this is the tournament they have to come good is because they really have gelled as a unit, and that chemistry is there now. So what can they do with it?
And one of the big things, too, is that Roberto Martinez has come out saying that he's going to give the injury-ridden Vincent Kompany up to 24 hours until they kick off their first group game to heal, to rest, to get to the best possible health that he can. I'm a little worried about that. I know he's obviously an exceptional player, and of course, as a professional, you're usually able to just kind of snap and jump right into it. But if you're coming off an injury and you're given 24 hours before a World Cup game, this isn't a Premier League game against Wolves. This is a World Cup game, regardless of how good or bad any of your World Cup opponents are. These are still world-class players. Do you agree with this move? Should Kompany be on this roster even with his injuries?
I think very few players deserve this, but I think he's one of them. And I really think, you have 22 other guys. You have matches that you can probably win without him against Tunisia and Panama. And even then, you might not need a victory versus England, because there's 6 points right there that you definitely should take. And furthermore, I think he's so important to that locker room, his presence, his leadership, that even an unhealthy Kompany who's on the bench is better served in that locker room, giving his sage advice, leading these players, rather than being in the pundits booth for Sky Sports or Fox Sports or something like that. So I think if they need to go with 22 guys, fine, let him be the leader. And if he comes in the quarterfinals or the semifinals, then that's exactly where you need him. Once again, I would not say this about a lot of players. He's one of the very few that I say should be there, and I'd say you should risk having one less player going into this World Cup.
And you look at this roster over, through and through. I know the one name we really haven't said is Eden Hazard, of course, but it's also at the same time, he's one of those players that his reputation precedes him saying, look, Hazard's a special player. If he's got the ball at his feet, he's going to go at the opposing defense. He's going to bring havoc upon any team that he goes against. But at the same time, I feel like at least in the 2014 World Cup and even in the Euros, he was pretty silenced, in all honesty. I was very surprised by that, especially with how well he does in the Premier League.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things. We look at players like Wayne Rooney and what they've done in the Premier League, and then has only scored 1 goal throughout his World Cups. You can say the same thing about England, actually. as a whole. But there are just players like that, players who haven't delivered on the biggest stage. And that's the thing that, like you said, we're all waiting to see is, can Hazard transform that form from club to country when they need him to most? And also, he picked up a little knock in that 6-1 win over Costa Rica, but he should be fine, good to go. But I still think that you're absolutely right. That's the one thing everybody's going to be looking at with this team.
In your opinion, does Belgium sweep the 3 games, or like you kind of were leaning more towards that 7 points with the 2 wins against Tunisia and Panama and then a draw potentially with England? I think that's kind of a fair result in my opinion as well.
Absolutely. I think we all are going to, I mean, this is probably a question for later in the broadcast, but this is Belgium and England's group for 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 will be Tunisia and Panama. The thing for me is, England always, since 1990, has found a way to fail, and found a way to fail spectacularly after that run in 1990. And so the question is it's kind of like we're all anticipating the car crash, and I hope it doesn't come, but I think a lot of people are saying, okay, how is the car going to crash this time?
Exactly.
So I think you're either going to see Belgium with 9 points, or Belgium and England with 7 points, or England somehow being just calamitous and somehow not going through. But I think that that's a really big if. I feel that under Gareth Southgate, something's a little bit different this time. But I do think that Belgium would be happy with 9 or 7 points. And I think that that'd be fair on them. I'm super excited for this England-Belgium game, because I think it's the creativity versus a very well-drilled English squad that has found ways to win games against big teams.
And the team that could potentially, in a sense, upset England is our next team we're talking about, Panama, as we're doing our Group F preview here on the Your Soccer Passport World Group G. Rather, I'm sorry, I know my ABCs. I was homeschooled, Mark.
Doing
I apologize.
So many groups in such a short time.
Oh, my goodness! That's the crazy part when you record so many groups in a short period of time. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's exciting now because Panama. This is their first World Cup. We see Panama a lot because of them being in CONCACAF, of course. We know guys like Roman Torres who play for the Seattle Sounders. Have you seen Roman Torres' like massive calf tattoo that he got, basically like of the World Cup trophy? It was a little much, but I mean, it's your first World Cup sometimes, and potentially for at least for Panama, this might be their only World Cup for who knows how long again as well.
Well, especially considering the fact that Roman Torres, is 32 on the oldest team in this tournament. I said, like you said, I said, go for it. I didn't see his calf tattoo, but what I did see was when the media asked him about his weight, he stood up and lifted up his shirt. And that was really a hilarious moment. I think it's one of those lasting memories of the tournament before the tournament even kicks off. Like you said, we know him from CONCACAF. We know so many of these players from MLS, as much as it was at the expense of the U.S. I'm so excited for Panama. So happy to see them in this tournament, but I don't see them pulling any upsets. I think that, first of all, not only their age is a concern to me, even though all those guys certainly deserve it, but at the same time, they don't have the speed. There's no way they can play a high line. There's no way that they can press up. There's not really much they can even do, really, I think, to hit on the break. And so when your back line is as slow as it is, that's going to be a real problem. And their biggest thing is just going to try and have teams not break them down. And so I unfortunately think it's going to be 3 and done for Panama. But my friends who are from Panama are just so excited, and they tell me about who's at the World Cup and who's missing every single day from October leading up to this moment.
And that's the hard part about it as well too. And I've dealt with my emotions as a United States soccer fan. I've dealt with it from the perspective of saying, look, U.S. just wasn't good enough, and you have to respect the teams that were good enough. And I hate the fact that there are fans out there that are like, my team didn't make it, screw everybody. I'm a U.S. fan and I'm an Italy fan. I have no teams in theory to cheer for this year. So my third default after that, thankfully, is Spain, because of having so many Spanish exchange students throughout the years. I kind of almost feel like I've got those ties to Spain with all of my knowledge of the Basque country and the running of the bulls and all that other fun stuff. But I digress. So I'm not mad about Panama. I want them to do well. I think that they can potentially, I don't want to put them in the same category as Costa Rica from 4 years ago. I don't think that's fair, because we both can agree Costa Rica 4 years ago was a better team than Panama is today, I think, right?
Absolutely. And, only one team making its debut has advanced, and that was actually Costa Rica in 1990. So you set that up for me kind of nicely. But you're absolutely right. They had young emerging players with the likes of Joel Campbell. And even now, I think Costa Rica itself is coming even stronger. You had a player like Rodney Wallace who hurt his knee right before he was going to go to that tournament. So this was a Costa Rican side that I think hit a peak early, but has been building up to become better and better and better. And I think this is a Panama side that hit its peak in qualifying for the tournament.
I agree. And it's a little concerning to me when you read reports that their star player is their goalkeeper, Jaime Pinedo, who's 36 years old. No offense, but if your best player is, in a sense, your oldest player, Blas Perez is the oldest with 37, but still, you can kind of start to speculate and guess and really start to realistically look at the results and say, okay, this team's not going to go very far. But it's a really good story. We both know what England is and isn't capable of doing. Who's to say Panama doesn't find a late goal, beat England, and then beat Tunisia, and all of a sudden they're in the second round? Crazier things have happened.
That's the great thing about this World Cup is we play the matches on paper beforehand, and then these teams go out and prove us wrong. And World Cups are all about shocks and darlings, and the Cameroons in 1990, and the Nigerias in 94, and Senegal in 2002, and on and on and on. So, I do hope that they go out and prove us wrong.
Well, speaking of a team that will hope to prove critics wrong, is our next team here in our group preview. It is Tunisia. I'll be honest, Mark, I don't know a lot about this squad. I know that there's a lot of injuries surrounding this team. Looking at this team, it only appears that one player has any major Premier experience. That would be one of their defenders that plays for Leicester City. What can you tell me about Tunisia? I really don't feel like I know much or there's much to know about this team.
Well, the biggest thing to know about Tunisia is that their strongest part of them is their midfield. Midfield is very solid. It's a team with a great character. The problem is they've lost a lot of creativity going forward with the injury to Youssef Mascani, who will be missing through. And so that's going to be their biggest loss. And so you have the League One star Wahabi Khazri, and he's going to be the linchpin, the player that they're all counting on, as well as Elis Sakiri, who was born in France, but obviously a Tunisian background and qualified to play for them, and defensive midfielder for Montpellier. And I think that he's going to be the linchpin to whether or not they are very strong against the likes of England and Belgium and make it very tough for them to score, or whether or not they're completely broken down and torn apart. And so I think all eyes should really be on him, because that's the player they're going to have to really look at. But the midfield is their best part. It's a team with great balance and great energy. But once again, the question is that creativity going forward and that ability to grab the goal when the chances do open up.
Yep, and I would agree with that as well, too. I mean, ultimately, what are you capable of doing in these circumstances? And it's always interesting to see what the local media says about their teams. This is what one of the local papers said. It says, fitness and form are serious problems, besides the absence of Youssef I forget how you said his name now.
I really just gave it the old college try, but I said Mascani. Now that you have me on the spot, Mascani.
Mascani, there we go. Sounds like a mixture of like someone that's from Wisconsin and like Minnesota or something. Like, I'm a Mascani. I don't know. Which is denying the Tunisian team a key attacking asset. A major uncertainty weighs on other players physically and psychologically in an inevitable situation. Well, which is true. This is another situation where these guys are happy to be there. They're going to give it their all. They're going to have great stories to tell their couple of next generations. This is going to go down in Tunisian football as, hey, we made it to the 2018 World Cup. But there's not much more after that, in my opinion, honestly, for this team. They're going to be fun, but we'll kind of leave it at that, in my professional opinion.
And I think in other groups that there would be a chance to go through. I think sometimes us, especially in the Western Hemisphere, forget how hard it is to navigate African qualifying.
Yep.
Just that in this case, I think that England on its day, if the car crash hasn't happened yet, and Belgium with their quality and what they've been able to do, are just a touch and a class above Tunisia in this group.
Ooh, interesting. That's a very interesting, but I like that statement overall. All right, we've toiled around England. We should get to England here to kind of wrap up this group preview. England is interesting. I feel like I'm one of many, and I think you're on the same boat too, where when England, it's good for international soccer when England is playing well. Are we in an agreement with that perspective?
Absolutely. I think especially in America, where the first league that was really shown en masse was the Premier League. And I think, you said that your default after the US and Italy was Spain. I think, and this is conjecture here, but for me, the majority of people, their default is England.
Yeah.
Because that's what we know as Americans, and that's what we've watched outside of USA soccer.
Right, exactly. And most people will go from U.S. national team to Premier League. They don't even go to MLS. There's not that connection there. It's just, I go to the soccer pub on Saturday mornings to go watch Liverpool, or I get up at 7 a.m. to watch, Everton play on NBC Sports. Like that's what people in the U.S. do. They don't. Well, MLS is another topic, but you're right though. England is kind of that second team for most U.S. soccer fans.
Absolutely, and I think worldwide too, just because of the reach that the Premier League has in those markets, China, Africa, wherever it be. And so I think that a lot of people are pulling for England. And I think not only that, but, and this is kind of my hot take on it, but I think the media in England and the way they sensationalize everything and the expectations that they put on the team, and it's always something. And this year it was what they did to Raheem Sterling. And I think that they really oftentimes almost play England out of the tournament before they've even kicked a ball. And I sometimes feel like if the media kind of left them alone, that they might go out and play a lot better. Maybe that's too harsh on the media, but I just think that, England doesn't have a chance to just get their head straight. And you see when they're not really paying attention to them in qualifying, they do fine. You get to this World Cup and all eyes are on them, and the expectations are just sky high. And in fact, that they know that people are just waiting for them to fail. It's like watching the Washington Capitals up until this year. But it's up to these players to find that breakthrough. And I am optimistic this year because I feel like they're a bit different in the way they go about their approach under Gareth Southgate.
Yes, and I would agree with that as well, too. I do find it interesting. England is one of the few teams that has just this added level of extra pressure, I feel like. And I don't know if it's because they're the nation that claims to have invented the game of soccer as well, too. That can go as, whatever. But when you have this entity, to bring it to like the NFL, if the Patriots don't make it to the playoffs, people think the system's kind of broken or skewed. If England doesn't do well at the international level, obviously, and on paper, we're like, okay, this team should do well. And they don't. We as international fans understand, like, well, England's going to find a way to screw it up. But you get what I'm saying, though, the perspective, like, it's good for the sport when the teams that are, in a sense, supposed to be good are playing at a high level. England has the talent to do it. There's never been a question in my mind, at least the last couple of World Cups. Do they have the talent or not? Of course they do. It's just the inability to put it together, and it feels like they just keep hitting the wall. All eyes seem to be on Harry Kane this year with his incredible run of continuing to do the last couple of years. Let's not forget they've got a little guy named Jamie Vardy on this team as well, too, among just a very talented attacking midfield. Their defense is very strong, and they've got 3 talented goalkeepers as well, too. I mean, this England team is interesting, too, because you read the quote-unquote weaknesses on this team, and really what it goes back to is the history. That's really all it goes back to. There's not a specific level on this England team that you're saying, the defense is a little weak. It mostly boils down to England's history and them being their own weakness.
Absolutely. And I think what's really shored them up was the way Gareth Southgate switched to a 3-5-2 from a 4-2-3-1 formation after the qualifiers. And I think that the difference was, back in the so-called golden generation, Gerrard and Lampard just couldn't play together. Now I think you actually have a midfield that knows how to play together. You have a back three where every single one of the center backs can pass the ball out of the back, which, if we remember, a certain great Sir Alex Ferguson built all his winning teams around ball-playing center backs. And you have now this 3 center back formation that can mark up much better against 2 forwards, or that allows a center back to go in and join the midfield. And I think that they've really thrived under that. And so it's just a matter of, can they kind of get out of their own way, as we've talked about, and not let the weight of history or this whole mental aspect of everybody else is expecting us to screw up, or how are we going to do it, and go on and prove everybody wrong.
Exactly right. So, I mean, aside from that, we both have kind of already predicted how we think England's going to do. We were kind of sitting there with that 7 points unless they shoot themselves in the foot. I don't see them beating Belgium. I just don't. Even I think if England on their best day and Belgium on their best day, I think we both agree Belgium's the better team either way in that aspect.
Absolutely. I think it's Belgium 1, England 2, Tunisia 3, Panama 4.
Yep, I would concur with that as well too, honestly. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, honestly. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to hit on with any of these 4 teams before we run today, Mark, but I think that's a pretty good overview of these 4 teams here in this group play.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is for me, I think that this is an England squad that has the potential to make its deepest run in years if everything does go right for them. And I think if this Belgium team is on their game, then look out. I expect them to cause a few upsets and maybe possibly get all the way to the finals. But once again, they have to be firing on all cylinders for that to happen. But when they are, it is a beautiful thing.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Well, Mark, I want to thank you for your time joining me here on Your Soccer Passport. You can listen to Mark and all the other hosts that we have as well, too, on virtually almost every episode, because we always try to get a different cast of characters on for every preview. The group previews are a little different, obviously, Mark, because we're trying to cycle through and people have schedules. But once the World Cup is actually up and running, we're going to probably have a more consistent roundtable of probably 4 to 5 people just recapping the games, because like we said, we have that entire international staff of players here and hosts. So it's always cool to see that. But big thanks to you, Mark, for taking time today, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you much. And for you, the listener, as well, too, thanks again for tuning in to Your Soccer Passport. We are presented by Public House Media. The World Cup, if you're listening to this recording, it started today. You know, this is it. This is the journey for all 32 teams, and we are thrilled to be going on this journey with you. And we remind you, of course, to check us out and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And make sure to follow Public House Media on social media and on their website, thephmedia.com. For Marc Serber, I'm Baxter Colburn. Thanks for listening to another edition of Your Soccer Passport, and we'll see you next time.